In this Maker video, we're going to show you how to add 8 LEDs to the interface to display digital data. We're also going to add a text box to display the value of the digital data. Now once again, this is the My Interface interface, and if you haven't viewed the previous videos, I recommend that you do so that you know what we've done up to now and also how to load the My Interface so that we can modify it with the switches and LEDs and so forth. Now up to now we've added 2 horizontal meters on the right that measure analog channels 0 and 1, and we also added an alarm setting to both meters so that their individual alarms will go off when the analog signals go above or below what they're set to. And in addition, we've added a momentary push button and slide switch to each meter to control its scale and alarm. And in the process, we introduced you to how to use event code to make the switches do this. Now up to now, this has been an example of how to display analog data. In this video, we're going to show you how to build an interface to display digital data. So let's get started. Let's come up here to the toolbar icon, click on our object editor, and come and select Controls 2. And what we want to do is come down and select some LED indicators, and they're here at the bottom. We'll choose the red one. I'm going to left click on it, and you see the cross there. I'm going to bring it up here, about here, and I'm going to release it. And there we have our first LED. Now we want to add 7 more LEDs like this. And the easiest way to do that is with the duplicate function. So let's come down here to our object editor drop-down menu and click on the duplicate function 7 times. So click on it once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that gets us our 8 LEDs that we want to start with. But of course they're not positioned right, so let's position them. We do that by coming over here and depressing our Shift key and right-clicking the LED. Now we can move the LED with our arrow keys. And let's move the last LED up here and over to about there. So that's where we're going to start with our LED, and that's going to be our least significant bit LED. Let's go to the next one. Hold into Shift key down again. Right click, once again use the arrow keys to grossly move the LEDs up, and now I'm going to hit the Shift key and I'm going to hit the arrow keys again to kind of fine-tune the position of the second LED. We'll do the same with the third LED. I know this might get a little bit boring to watch, but nevertheless I think you're going to learn something with it. I'm using the arrow keys once again to move it, pushing the Shift key down and fine-tuning the position with the arrow keys. Shift key, right click, arrow keys again, coming up here. That looks about right. Shift key, right click, arrow keys to move it back up. Pushing the Shift key and moving the arrow keys to fine-tune it in there. Right click, arrow keys. Well, this time Shift arrow keys, kind of move it up a bit and over, and it looks like we're bunched up here. So what I'm going to do is click on the leftmost LED, right click on it that is, and I'm going to just move the LED out of the way. It's going to kind of be buried under the area for a while, but that's all right. We'll revive it. Now let's go to the next LED, right click on it, bring it up, fine tune its position, and we want to fine tune the position next to it as well. Okay, that looks about right. But now we have our first LED buried behind the plot area. So what are we going to do about that? Well, to do that, let's come over here to the config setting, and we noticed that in our original video, we resized our plot area on an 80 by 80% basis, if you will, in the X and Y direction. Well, it looks like 80 in the X direction is a little bit too much, so let's come down here and let's change that to something like 78. And we'll hit the set, and 78 is almost right. So we can come over here to our first LED, hit the Shift key, right-click on it, and then use our arrow keys to kind of maneuver it in just perfectly. It looks like 78 is still not enough, so we want to come down here and let's change it to 77. Hit the Set key. All right, that looks pretty good. So now we have our 8 LEDs all in a row, and what we want to do now is configure the LEDs so they will react to the digital signals. The leftmost LED is going to be our most significant bit, so let's right-click on it, and we bring down our drop-down menu, come down here to Auto Channel 0, click on it, and we know that we see it's set to 0, so we want that to be set to bit 7. As it says here in the dialog box, it says enter digital bit channel to monitor 0 to 32 or use binary values such as R-time for a label. Well, okay, what we want to do, since we're plotting 8 bits of digital data, and this is going to be our most significant bit, let's change this to a 7. And remember, we want to push the enter key, and that'll get it in there. Let's double check it, right click on it, and yes indeed, we are set to auto channel 7. Let's do the same thing with the other 7 LEDs. Right click on it, go to auto channel. This one we're going to make 6, hit the enter key. Right click on the next one, auto channel, we'll make this 5, hit the enter key. The next one over, auto channel, make this 4, enter. Over here to the third one, hit 3, enter. Here to the next one, hit 2, enter. Here to the next and last, right click, make that 1, enter. And let's just verify that this one is set to channel 0, and it is. So now what we have is we have our LEDs all set to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So if we decided to plot digital data, we could probably have those LEDs flash in the direction of the digital data. And let's try that now. Let's come down here. We have some digital data being sent to us by our microcontroller. And there we go. Our LEDs are working. And they're displaying the digital data that's coming out of our micro. All except LED 0. So there's something wrong with LED 0. So let's go and stop our data. Come over here to LED 0. Come down to Auto Channel 0. And let's hit the enter key to make sure that works. Now I think it's going to work now. Yep, it does. So one of the rules of MakerPlot in terms of configuring controls is whenever you enter something in a text box, always push the enter key to key it in. And if there's another key there like set, hit that as well. All right, it looks like our digital data is working. So now what we want to do is apply a text box to be able to display that digital data in decimal form. So let's stop our plotting for a second. Come back up here to our object editor. Click on it. And this time we'll go over to Controls 1. Now we haven't examined the Controls 1, which we will do in a subsequent video. But we want to come over and grab a text object. So we'll click on this, drag it over right under the LEDs, and release it. And this text object is a text box, and its name is TXT67. And we also see that in the object editor under name txt_67. What we need to do now is we need to be able to configure this text box so that it will display the digital representation of the decimal interpretation of the digital data that we're experiencing. So to do that, we'll come over here to something that we haven't seen before, and those are our object timer, object back, analog, digital, message, reset, and double click objects. And this time we're going to click on the O digital or object digital, and this is kind of like event code that we want to enter. We'll begin by entering our familiar exclamation point POBJ standing for plot object. We'll enter the name of the text box, which is txt_67, and we'll set that equal to open paren DIN close paren and hit the enter key. Now what we've done is we have set that text box equal to the digital input values. So let's see how that works. Let's drop our object editor. Let's turn on our digital data. And we notice that we have some ones and zeros happening, which are equivalent to the LED data that we're seeing above. So it looks like we didn't really do our digital value correctly in our O digital box. And the reason why is because the data is really coming in exactly like this. And we can tell by coming to our log debug immediate window, click on digital, and this is how it's coming in for our microcontroller. It's coming in ones and zeros. So what we're doing is displaying exactly what's coming in from our microcontroller on our text box. Now that's not what we want, but that's what we got. So what we need to do now is first drop our log debug immediate window, turn off our plotting, go back to our object editor, and modify our event code. And the way we're going to do that is come in here and do some MakerPlot math. And MakerPlot math uses the square brackets. So we're going to put a square bracket in front of our DIN, and we're going to come here and, we're going to come and add a space, and then we're going to put in a MakerPlot instruction, and that is DAC and end with a square bracket and an enter. Drop our object editor, turn our plotting on. So now we have a decimal representation of our digital data. And it seems to be repeating itself very effectively. Looking at it this way, it looks like our text box is a little bit too wide. So let's change that. Let's turn off our data. Let's right-click and bring up our object editor, and now what we want to do is click on our width control and then use our arrow key to shorten up the display and also reduce the height of display. And then let's move it over. We'll click on the left or top, and then we'll use the arrow keys to move it over, because in another video we're going to add a label to this number to indicate exactly what it is. Now let's remove our object editor, come back to plotting again, and it looks like our digital data with the decimal representation below it is working just fine. And one more thing, we have our analog meters working. They're plotting along with the analog data that we're displaying as well, and we have the alarms turned off. We can turn them on. So we've got a nice interface now with both digital and analog data on it. and we've shown you really how to affect inputting the various controls into this. But we're not quite done yet, as we always say. Let's turn off our plotting. Now we need to save this. Let's come up here to our macro builder. Come and click on our wrench icon inside our macro builder. Save that to our interface. And we'll click on My Interface. And it says, do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. All right. And it also says, the path has changed. Would you like to rebuild the object macro to update the path? Yes. Okay. Now let's make sure that everything works by coming here to the traffic light icon, clicking on it, answering yes to our run this macro question, and let's see if it rebuilds. It looks like success, but let's check it out. Let's drop our macro builder, come down to our rocker switch, turn on some data, and indeed we are plotting digital data. So in this video, what we've learned how to do is add 8 LEDs and a text box to display the decimal value of the digital data that's coming in. In the next video, we're going to show you how to annotate all of these controls with labels.